Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Montague here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set prerequisites and requirements in your Canvas modules. So I'm in my MHS example course, and I'm going to hop on over to modules where I've gone ahead and built out 3 example modules to show you a few different settings you can use when you're setting up requirements. So you can see I've got my 3 modules built in, and to set requirements on one of these modules, you follow the title line of your module. So for week 1, I'm going to follow it over to my 3 dots and click on Edit. And this is going to take me to my module settings page where I can change the title of my module. I can choose to lock my module until a certain date and time, and I can also add requirements. So when I click on Add Requirement right here, the first thing that's usually going to be automatically checked is that students must complete all of these requirements. So right now I only have one requirement built in for test page 1, and you can say that they either have to view the item, mark the item as complete, or contribute to the page in order to say that they have completed this particular requirement. So I'm going to change this one to mark as done, and I'm going to click Update Module right here. This message is asking me that if I want to relock the modules, because some students have already started working through this course and might be further along than what this module would be letting them do if I had requirements on it all of a sudden. But I'm going to click Continue because I don't want to mess those students up who have already progressed through the course. They are not going to have to go back and redo any work if I just hit Continue instead of relocking these modules. So you can see in my week 1, I now have this message that says complete all items in the module. That means I've got some requirements set here. When I go over to my home page, I'm going to hop into Student View and show you what that module looks like to a student that would be working through this course. So once our Student View loads here, I'm going to hop over to my modules again. And you can see here that we've got our complete all items showing up for the student, so they know there's some requirements in this course. But as you can see, there's only this one circle that's empty over here next to test page 1, because I didn't set any requirements for the discussion, the assignment, or the quiz that have been built into this module. So by only having that one requirement built in, it's only telling me that I have to complete this one requirement in order to move through to the next set of modules. All right, so when I click on test page 1 as the student and mark as done up here in the right corner, when I go back to modules, you can see now that I have marked this test page as done, it's got a check mark next to it, and then it's got a green check mark in the title of my module because I've only set that one requirement. It's telling them that the module is complete and they don't have to do these discussion, assignment, or quiz part of this module. So I'm going to leave Student View and go back into my Week 1 Edit section by clicking on my hamburger and clicking on Edit. And I need to actually add more requirements, so each of these items within my module has a requirement attached to it. So when I click Add Requirement, it's going to add more of these drop-down boxes where I can select different things to have different requirements on. So I also want to make a requirement for the discussion number 1. I want to make a requirement for the online submission assignment 1, and I also want to make a requirement for my unnamed quiz. I'm going to require all of these things. So for my test discussion 1, they can either view the item and that would complete it, or they can contribute to the page. I'm going to say I want them to contribute to the page because I don't want to count them as completing a discussion unless they've actually made a discussion post. For the online submission assignment, I have the option that viewing the item would be a completion, marking it as done would be completion, submitting the assignment would be a completion, or they have to make at least a certain score on the assignment in order for it to be complete. So I'm going to say for the assignment, once they submit the assignment, they're done with that step, they can move on to the next one. For the unnamed quiz, I have the similar items to the assignment, but they can view the item, submit the assignment, or score at least a certain score on the quiz in order for this requirement to be met. I'm going to show you right now that if you choose the score at least option, it's going to show you the point total that you've assigned to the quiz or assignment that you're choosing this for, and you can put in the total amount of points you need a student to score in order to complete that requirement. So for this example, I'm saying I want a student to score at least 15 out of 30 on the quiz in order for that requirement to be satisfied, and they can move on to the next module. So one thing to note if you're doing this score at least a certain point total, if you have a quiz or an assignment limited to only one attempt per student, you will have to go in and manually wipe their first attempt if they don't meet that minimum score requirement that you're setting in order for them to retake it or resubmit it and get a better score potentially. So unless you are providing unlimited times for students to be able to take a quiz or submit an assignment to get that minimum score that you're setting, you probably want to avoid this setting overall. So you don't have that additional step where you're going to have to go in and keep wiping their score so they can redo the quiz or resubmit the assignment and try to get better and better each time. Because you might have students that have to, take the quiz 5 times to get your minimum score, and that would be a lot of work on your part to keep resetting them over and over. So that's something to note when you're doing that score at least a minimum point total. So I'm just going to actually say they need to submit this assignment, or since it's a quiz, it will be submitting the quiz. We'll get them through that requirement, and they can move on from there. All right, and note for these settings, I did not check this box that says students must move through requirements in sequential order. I'm only making students complete all of these things, and they can complete them in whatever order they would like to. If you need a student to move through things in sequential order, you can go ahead and check that box to make sure that they're moving through them in the right order. All right, so I'm going to just click Update Module on this one, and we're not going to make them do sequential order. And again, I'm going to continue instead of relocking my modules. So now we do have our requirements still showing that we've got a built-in complete all items here. And I'm going to move on to my settings for this next module. Now this one I'm going to set very similarly to my first one for week 2. For my requirements, I'm going to say that they need to complete all of the requirements that I put here. And I've got 3 items in this module, so I'm putting 3 requirements in here that they must complete. And for this one in particular, I'm going to say that students have to move through this one in sequential order, just so you can see the difference when I go back into student view later. So I've got my test page 2. I want them to mark that as done. For my math PDF assignment, they need to submit the assignment. And for my test discussion number 2, they need to contribute to the page or contribute to the discussion in this case. One thing you'll notice as well for this week 2 module is that I suddenly have this option to add prerequisites, since this is not the first module that I have in my course. Adding prerequisites basically means that I am saying that students need to complete one module before they can move on to the next. So in this case, my drop-down menu gives me week 1, saying that students will need to complete week 1 before they can move on to week 2's module. So you don't need to have that prerequisite built in if you want students to be able to move through modules however they feel is appropriate for them. But if you want students to be working through your course sequentially, it might be a good idea to set up some prerequisites just to make sure that they've got their previous work done for the past week before they move on to the next week. To get rid of any prerequisites, you just simply click on the X next to it and it will disappear, and same with the requirements. But I want to keep these requirements, having students move through these ones in sequential order, and I'm going to click Update Module down here to apply those changes. And again, we're going to continue instead of relocking the module. So you can see for my week 2, I now have the complete all items requirements built in for this module as well. Now week 3, I'm going to go ahead and go into my edit settings again. And you can see I do have additional prerequisites here. Since this is week 3, it's saying that they must complete week 1 and potentially must complete week 2. If I select week 1, I can add a second prerequisite and say they also must complete week 2 to my prerequisites in order for them to be able to access this module. Again, I'm going to exit out of those because I want to be able to show you in student view how the requirements are going to work. So I'm going to add requirements here as well. This time, instead of doing the students must complete all of these requirements, I'm going to choose students must complete one of these requirements. Now, this setting is like an either or kind of setting. So I don't foresee you guys using this in a whole lot of instances, but I thought it was worth mentioning just so you know how it works. So if you have, let's say, a module that has a page of notes and a video that students have to view, and then let's say maybe 3 different discussions, and you only want the students to be required to complete one of the 3 discussions, you could use this setting right here. Students must complete one of these requirements, so they could choose one of the 3 discussions to contribute to and wouldn't have to be required to complete the other of the 3 discussions. But again, I don't foresee you using this setting a whole lot. So I've got 4 things within this module, so I'm going to add 4 requirement fields here. So test page 3 is my first one. I'm going to say mark as done for that. The interactive practice discussion, they must contribute to it. For the online submission assignment number 2, they must submit the assignment. My drop down will come up. There we go. And for my unnamed quiz number 2, they must submit the assignment as well. All right, so again, when students are working through this module, it's telling them that they are going to only need to complete one of these requirements. So it's not going to make them do all of these things. They pick one, and that will basically determine that the module has been completed by the student. So I'm going to update this module and then continue here, and we're going to go into our student view again so you guys can see what each of these settings looks like to a student. So in my student view, once it loads here again, we are going to go back over to modules. And within my modules, so now you can see that this first test page is checked off because I've already marked it as done. And my title bar is showing me that I have started this module, but I'm not quite done with it because I have circles now that are not checked off for these other 3 things. Now, if you remember this week 1, I said that students did not have to work through this sequentially. So as a student, I can click on this unnamed quiz and go in and take this quiz really quick, and I don't have to necessarily have looked at the discussion or completed the assignment or even looked at the test page before I go in and take this quiz. So if I go through and submit my answers for this very, very easy quiz that I've set up as an example, so I get my score as a 30 out of 30, and when I go back over to modules here, you can see now I've got a check mark for the quiz. I've completed that one, and I have a check mark for marking the test page as complete. But I've skipped over the discussion and the assignment, again, because I have not required this to be completed in sequential order. So a student can complete these in whatever order they want, but it's still telling them that they have to complete all of these things before the module has been marked as complete. All right, so down for our week 2, now this is the one that I chose that we do need to work through this in sequential order. So you'll notice that the math PDF assignment and the test discussion number 2 are both grayed out because I have not completed this test page number 2 mark as complete in order to move on to my next item in sequential order. Although each of these are showing my empty circle right now as uncompleted. So if I go into my test page 2 and click on my mark as done, when I go back into modules over here, you can see in our week 2 that we now have the math PDF assignment has opened up because I've completed the requirement right beforehand. So I can complete my math PDF assignment, but I cannot go into my test discussion yet because I need to complete my PDF assignment first. All right, so the last module that we've got set here is the one that only has to complete one of these requirements. So if I move my face over a little bit so you can see the bottom here, all of these items have the circle with no check mark in them done, but since I'm only requiring them to complete one assignment, I can go into this quiz and complete this quiz. So let's take this one as well. It's another very, very easy quiz. So let me get all of my answers in, and then I can submit my quiz. I got a 30 out of 30 on that one. I'm good at basic math. And when I go back into my modules now, in Student View, week 3 is now saying that I am completed because I have completed one of these things within my week 3 module, and I was only required to complete one. So this module is complete as far as Canvas is concerned. So again, if you're only requiring one thing with one item to be completed within your module, I would strongly advise against using that setting unless you have a specific situation where students are able to actually just pick one thing from your module, or just a couple things from your module that they have to complete without actually having to complete the whole module. But if I were you, I would basically want to stick to the completing all items settings, either in sequential order or not. It's up to you. But that is your basics on how requirements and prerequisites work within Canvas modules. I know it can be a little bit confusing, so if you need any additional help or guidance setting any requirements for your modules, just let me know and I would be happy to assist you. Hopefully you got something out of this video, and I will see you guys next time.